You talked about the authors using adapting and all of these different methodologies. So how does that tie in with the doctrine of inspiration? Are all of them inspired, or is one of them inspired?
Now, in terms of the doctrine of divine inspiration of the Bible, I believe the Bible is divinely inspired. I can't prove that. And I could give some theological arguments for it, but they're not historical arguments, all right? And I'm focusing on the historical arguments right here. What is it we can actually prove? But what I would say is this. As one who believes the Bible is divinely inspired, if I want to know what divinely inspired scriptures look like, I go to the Bible. And I study the Bible for what it is. So there are some who would object to saying, well, the gospel authors would use these compositional devices. They couldn't, not in divinely inspired scripture. Because, boy, if you're saying one angel instead of two, you're lying. Well, I don't consider that a lie. I consider it a compositional device that's common. We don't consider a parable to be a lie. It's the genre. We don't consider it to be a lie when the psalmist tells God to awaken from his sleep. God doesn't sleep. But that's not an error. That's Psalms. That's a genre. It's poetry, right? Well, you got to judge the Gospels according to the genre in which they were written. And if this is the genre and they're following those rules, then they're not out of step with those things. And you have to judge them according to the genre in which they were written, rather than forcing our idea of modern precision upon them. And what I find a lot of Christians who are resistant of these kinds of ideas is they are coming to the scriptures with their own presuppositions of how God should have written scripture, based on 21st century rules of how we do it today. As though God is going to say, oh, I know how this 21st century people are going to be thinking. I'm going to write the Gospels that way, rather than the literary conventions that their immediate audiences are going to recognize and appreciate. That's kind of really arrogant of us to say we're going to require God to do that. So the principle that I try to live by is one that my Greek professor, Ron Sauer, who was F.F. Bruce's last doctoral student. And Dr. Sauer told me once, he said, Bruce said, read the scriptures and develop your theology from it, rather than bring in your theology and reading it into scripture. That's something I've always tried to model. And so the principle I live by is, if scriptures are divinely inspired, and I believe that they are, then I must accept them and love them and bow to them as God has given them to me, rather than trying to force them into a mold of how I think he should have. And if I refuse to do this, I may believe that I have a high view of Scripture when all I really have is a high view of my view of Scripture. And that's just misguided piety. So if we believe the Scriptures are divinely inspired, we say, what do they look like? Well, this is what we have. So this is what divinely inspired Scriptures look like. And that's what we need to be comfortable with.